everybody? Oh, come on. The last one. Good evening. Good evening. Yeah, there we go. First of all, it's been amazing sitting here and listening to all my colleagues. Something we never get to do is actually listen to each other, and so I want to thank all of them. And there's also, they're one of these, you know, you can sort of be both anxious and elated about going last. Anxious in that there's really nothing else to say. Elated that you can sort of, in some ways, sort of pull some things together. And I think one of the things that I've noticed, and Lisa pointed it out in her talk, that there's been a lot of discussion about justice and morality. And we're going to end a little bit on that topic, but I'm going to do it a little bit of a different way, because I am a historian by trade, and in fact I'm a narrative historian. So what that means is I like to tell stories with embedded arguments. And so I'm going to tell you a story in our last 9 minutes and 25 seconds. I'm going to tell you a story about escaping the ivory tower, or perhaps, somewhat better, how one Harvard history professor escaped the ivory tower and learned to live and tell the tale. So, what I want to do is I want to start our story. I want to move us back to 1994. When I first arrived here at Harvard as a very eager, but quickly soon to be miserable graduate student. Yes, graduate students are by and large really miserable, but it's not their choice, really. It's structural. I came here in the history department, and I knew what I was going to do my dissertation on, which was the topic of the Mau Mau emergency, which was a period of time in Kenya from 1952 to about 1960 or so. And you just swing a cat and hit about at least 6 or 7 dozen living historians who have worked on this topic, hundreds and hundreds of books written about it and articles and the like, but nobody, interestingly enough, had written about the system detention camps that had unfolded in Kenya during this period of time, which was rather strange. Seeing that it was a very large part of this big counterinsurgency operation that the British levied against the Kikuyu, or the big African ethnic group, in order to suppress the emergency and to save Kenya from civilization, as they call it. So, fortunate for me, it's the original topic, and I looked at this, and one of my original premises was the fact that I'm kind of going along with conventional wisdom. Listen, this was a huge system. They assumed, the government said about 70 or 80,000 people were detained, that in fact, yes, there were some bad apples, a couple one-offs and the like, but by and large, this was a fairly benign system, which was all about rehabilitation, or hearts and minds, right? We've heard this before, hearts and minds in Vietnam. So I go into this, and more or less, and I stuck in front of my department in year 3 of graduate school and said I was going to write a dissertation about the hearts and minds campaign. Well, long story short, I was wrong. And after about 10 years of research, I'd come to find out that, in fact, no, it wasn't 70 or 80,000 detained, it was closer to 1.5 million Kikuyu, where there are all sorts of systems of torture and forced labor and the like, and in fact, when it was all said and done, that we had massive cover-up going on. And so when I looked at this, and I'll sort of give you a sense of what I came across, it was this process that unfolded in front of me. And about a year into it, I start realizing that things weren't adding up. Things weren't adding up. What happens if I take the whole thing, I turn it upside down? I turn upside down my premise. That in fact, this was not a system of one-offs or bad apples, but this was in fact a system whereby the British colonial government made a very deliberate decision to torture people in order to get them to cooperate, and when all was said and done, they got rid of the documents and covered it up. Well, once I did that, all of the evidence began to make sense. So I went from being, oh good God, I have no dissertation, to oh good God, what have I found? So, this gives you a sense of some of the images, where we have here, we've got systems of, and there's lots of different evidence that I used, and photographs were very useful, as one can imagine. And so here we have a system of detention where you can see here where these are Africans who have been arrested and detained and back to a police station. It's interesting though for our narrative, and here we've got, and it's not dissimilar to other situations where there are big massive roundups, and there's one going on in Nairobi here, where they're telling people to get out of their houses, to pack one bag and to be orderly and the like. And eventually they're taken and put in front of these big screening parades where they have hooded screeners that are saying, you know, one way or the other, to detention camp or back home again. If you're sent to the detention camp, you're rounded up into one of these lorries like this, caged-in lorries. And then you're sent to what is sort of a temporary detention camp, where they interrogate you more. And then eventually you are stripped of all of your possessions. And in the foreground here we can see shoes and pocket watches and snuff containers. And the iconography is similar to other kinds of situations that obviously many of us are familiar with. And then we go on and eventually all the detainees are stripped, naked. And they're marched through disinfectant. Kind of big, enormous cattle dip. And many people actually don't swim, so there are lots of stories. And in the process of my research, I interviewed about 300 or 400 people, and of people drowning within it. And then eventually, everybody is given a number. So this is your classic dehumanizing process, right? People are stripped down to be social non-people. And what's interesting about this is actually taken from a photograph of a detainee bracelet from one of the people I interviewed in the course of my work, where they had actually removed the one that had been issued to them and fashioned one themselves from the corrugated iron roof of one of the detention camps. And obviously this is a form of personal empowerment. They're forced to labor. The government knows they're in violation of all of the International Labor Organization conventions. There's lots of correspondence about this back and forth. And then ultimately, though, the question becomes, who knew what and what did no one mean, right? And so, in one of those sort of wonderful moments when you're doing research, I come across files called letters from detainees. Because, of course, as I mentioned, there was a lot of cover-up that went on, which included the purging and destruction of massive numbers of files that were related to this. But somehow or another, these files, the detainee letters, remained and escaped the purges. And so you get validation of things that went on, and this one is in particular where you can see, I'm not sure how far away you are, but in the middle here, castration of men, meaning of course castration of men, and the kinds of crimes that were going on in these camps were by any standards quite horrific. So, where do we go from here with my 3 minutes left? Fast forward to 2005, the dissertation becomes a book, the book's published, and I think that it was one of those situations where I felt a great deal of, and we've heard a lot about this, moral responsibility. When I did a lot of these interviews, people asked me for nothing. Absolutely nothing in return. Only that people knew their story. And I felt like there it was, 2005. The book was out, it was widely received. The story is out there. Now, of course, I'm wholly reviled by some people in various camps, right? I go through Heathrow, the lights go off. I'm always interrogating Heathrow. But nevertheless, I had accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. But the phone rang. And it's Lee Day, human rights attorneys in London. It's going to be the first massive case ever been filed by former colonized population against the British government. And it's based on your work. And we need you to be the expert. Okay. So, I've done what I was supposed to do, right? I run this by some of my colleagues here. At this point, we're talking a couple of years ago. I'm an untenured faculty member. People thought, what, are you crazy? Right? In part because, listen, the book was controversial. I've been political enough. It wasn't necessarily a risk-averse kind of project. But a lot of people looked at this and really said to me, this is not the right thing to do. This isn't what's best for you, right? Don't take the risk. And what was interesting about this was that I paused. I did. I froze. Everything within me would normally say, do what? Sign up. Be the expert witness. But I didn't know quite what to do. And so, where I'm going with this, and I knew all of the things, right? We've heard a lot of this tonight, and it's been, you know, I was listening to Professor Green and the, you know, the Neanderthal, right? The point and shoot, and suddenly we got to flip the brain on, right? We got to put it on manual. And Professor Scarry talking about act up in terms of justice, right? And thinking about the nature of beauty. And here we are. I'm sitting here even thinking tonight. You know, I was entranced by the beauty of Harvard in the classroom and all that was going on. I had to really put myself out there in a way that was completely outside of my bounds. And yes, we hear about it, and you hear all the time in tone sheets, right? Do the right thing. I can go down the list of all these things, right? Make sure that you're morally responsible and all this. And of course, I didn't go to the public school in New Haven. I went to the tech school in New Jersey, where it was always in the nation's service. We heard this over and over again, so much so that, you just hear this pounding through your brain. But it was only until it was the night before I had to sort of make a phone call to these attorneys and tell them what my choice was. And I was walking home, and I was one of those people that, one of those mumblers, right? I'm sure you've done this before, where you're walking through the park and this person's mumbling. I pull my kids away from them. I was that person that night. I was talking to myself. And this seemed to go on for a while. And I finally looked up and thought, good grief. And I realized I was nowhere near home. I literally had walked on the other side of the road. I looked up by the observatory. I was out, and granted, I like the Dunkin' Donuts down by where the Soldiers Field is, because they do make the best sandwiches. There are differences in the Dunkin' Donuts. Nevertheless, but the point of this is that it was very apparent to me, because what had happened to me? I'd lost my way. And at that point, and this is where I leave you with the message, and that is that in order to escape the ivory tower, you have to develop your own internal compass. And at the moment where you're not sure what to do and how to get out, pull it out and use it.